In the most luxurious building downtown, every employee feared one woman. The Billionaire CEO, known for her cold precision and zero tolerance for mistakes. A single glance from her could silence an entire floor. But one ordinary morning, as she prepared to unleash her fury in front of the whole staff, a janitor, a single dad who had just started working there, stepped forward. No shouting, no resistance, just one calm sentence. And that moment changed everything. Could a man with no power reach the heart of a billionaire? The executive floor of Anderson Tower operated on fear, not the loud, chaotic kind, but the silent type that made grown professionals check their emails 3 times before hitting send. The kind that turned conference rooms into minefields where one wrong word could detonate a career. Clarissa Anderson built her empire on control. At 34, she ran a tech conglomerate worth billions, sat on 4 corporate boards, and had her face on the cover of Fortune 3 times. She wore tailored suits in shades of gray and black, kept her dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested efficiency over style, and moved through her building like winter itself. Her employees did not love her. They obeyed her. The difference mattered, though Clarissa told herself it did not. Respect through fear worked just as well as respect through affection. Better, even. Love made people sloppy. Fear kept them sharp. She arrived each morning at 6:45. Her assistant knew to have coffee waiting. Black, no sugar. The temperature had to be exactly 190 degrees. Clarissa once sent back a cup that registered at 187. The building staff learned quickly. Maintenance crews finished their work before she arrived. Cleaning happened after she left. The few times she encountered service workers in the halls, they pressed themselves against walls and avoided eye contact. Clarissa preferred it that way. Invisible machinery. Everything running smoothly without her having to acknowledge the hands that made it happen. On a Tuesday morning in late September, the machinery broke down. The quarterly review meeting was scheduled for 9. Department heads filed into the glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor with the enthusiasm of prisoners approaching the gallows. They took their seats in careful silence, arranging folders and tablets with unnecessary precision. Clarissa entered at exactly 9. No greeting. She set her laptop at the head of the table and opened the presentation file. The projector screen stayed dark. She clicked again. Nothing. The IT director fumbled with his tablet. Robert had only been in the position for a month, still learning the systems after his predecessor left. The system should be "Give me just 1 second, Miss Anderson." Clarissa did not give him 1 second. She did not give him anything except the look that had made interns quit via email rather than face her in person. "How long have you known about this problem?" Her voice carried the temperature of her coffee, exactly calibrated to burn. Robert's face went pale. "I did not. We tested everything yesterday. It was working perfectly." Clearly it was not working perfectly, or we would not be sitting here watching a blank screen. The room held its breath. 14 executives became statues. Someone's phone buzzed. They did not reach for it. "The presentation was due to start 3 minutes ago," Clarissa continued. "I have investors calling in at 9:15. What exactly is your plan?" Robert stood, moving toward the projector with the jerky motions of a malfunctioning robot. His hands shook as he checked cables. "I think it might be the connection port, or possibly the, I do not pay you to think. I pay you to know." "Yes, ma'am. I mean, Miss Anderson. I can have this fixed in." "You have already wasted 5 minutes of my time and theirs." She gestured at the table. 5 minutes multiplied by 14 people. That is 70 minutes of productivity lost because you failed to do your job. It was not really about the projector. Everyone in that room understood that. The projector was just the visible crack in a structure Clarissa kept under constant pressure. Any crack had to be sealed immediately or the whole thing might collapse. Robert backed away from the equipment. "I apologize, Miss Anderson. This has never happened before. Apologies do not fix problems. Competence does." Her words landed like a gavel. The finality in them suggested Robert's employment had already ended. He just did not know it yet. The door opened. No one had knocked. That alone was unusual enough to make heads turn. A man in a gray maintenance uniform stepped inside, pushing a cleaning cart. He looked to be in his late 30s, with the kind of face that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. Dark hair, tired eyes, the build of someone who worked with his hands. He stopped just inside the doorway, taking in the scene. The frozen executives, the blank screen, Clarissa's arctic stare currently destroying what remained of Robert's composure. The janitor, Daniel, according to the name stitched on his uniform, did not back out apologetically like most people would have. He looked at Robert, then at Clarissa, then at the room full of people who seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. "Sorry," Daniel said quietly. "I will come back." He started to turn the cart around. Then he stopped. Something in his expression shifted. Not fear, exactly. More like recognition of a choice that needed making. "Actually," Daniel said, and 14 executives flinched at the interruption. "Before I go, can I say something?" Clarissa's attention snapped to him like a searchlight finding a target. "You may not. Please leave." Daniel did not leave. He stood there with one hand on his cleaning cart, weighing something internal. Then he spoke anyway. "These people are not trying to disappoint you." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. No one moved. No one breathed. The entire room recalibrated around this impossible moment. Clarissa turned fully toward him. When she spoke, her voice could have frozen water. "Excuse me." Daniel met her eyes. Not challenging, not aggressive, but not backing down either. "I said they are not trying to disappoint you. The system failed, not the person. Everyone here showed up ready to do their job. Sometimes things break. That does not mean someone deserves to be humiliated." The silence that followed was different from the earlier one. That had been tension. This was shock. Clarissa took one step toward Daniel, then another. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could probably see the fury crystallizing behind her eyes. "You are a janitor," she said, each word carved from ice. "Yes, ma'am. You have worked in this building for how long?" 5 days. 5 days. She let that number sit. "And in those 5 days, you have somehow become an expert on how I should manage my employees?" "No, ma'am. I am not an expert on anything except cleaning floors. But I know people. And I know when someone is genuinely trying their best and still coming up short through no fault of their own." Clarissa's jaw tightened. Around the table, executives studied their hands, the ceiling, their own reflections in the glass. Anything but this confrontation. "What I do or do not say to my staff is none of your concern," Clarissa said. "You are here to empty trash cans and mop floors. That is the extent of your role in this company. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am, that is clear." "Then perhaps you should return to that role before you find yourself looking for a new one." Daniel nodded slowly. He gripped the handle of his cart. "I understand. But I still believe what I said was true. They are just people, and people make mistakes. That does not make them failures." He turned the cart and pushed it toward the door. The wheels squeaked slightly on the polished floor. Everyone watched him go. The door clicked shut behind him with a sound like punctuation. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Clarissa turned back to the table as if nothing had happened. "Robert, you have until noon to have this system functioning properly." Meeting adjourned. She walked out. The door closed behind her with the same definitive click. The 14 executives remained frozen for another moment before someone finally exhaled. In her office, Clarissa stood at the window overlooking the city. 40 floors below. Cars moved like blood cells through concrete arteries. From up here, everything looked orderly, controlled, manageable. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the glass until they steadied. No one spoke to her that way. No one. Not her board members, who feared losing their positions. Not her investors, who feared losing their money. Not her employees, who feared losing their jobs. The entire structure of her life depended on that fear. It kept things running. It kept people in line. It kept her safe from the kind of disappointment that had once nearly destroyed her. An apology does not fix a broken promise. She had learned that at 22, when her business partner, the man she had trusted more than anyone, had sold her designs to a competitor and left her with nothing but debt and a lesson. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Control was the only reliable substitute. She had rebuilt from that betrayal. Built an empire, actually. And she had done it by making sure no one ever got close enough to hurt her again. Fear kept people at the right distance. Fear made them predictable. But this janitor Daniel had looked at her without fear. Not with contempt or defiance. Just a calm certainty that made his words land differently. Like he actually believed them. Like he saw something she could not. Clarissa turned from the window. Her coffee had gone cold. She left it untouched and returned to her desk, opening files that needed review. Work was reliable. Numbers did not talk back. Spreadsheets did not judge. But for the rest of that morning, she kept seeing his face. The quiet conviction in it. The absence of fear that everyone else carried like a uniform. She told herself it did not matter. He was a janitor. He would learn his place, or he would leave like everyone else who could not adapt to her standards. By noon, Robert had the projection system working. By 1, the quarterly review concluded successfully. By 2, Clarissa had forgotten the whole incident, or so she told herself. But that evening, leaving late as always, she saw Daniel in the hallway outside her office. He was emptying trash cans with the same quiet efficiency he had shown that morning. He glanced up as she passed, nodded politely, and returned to his work. No apology, no fear. Just acknowledgement of her presence, and then back to the task. Clarissa walked to the elevator. The doors closed. She rode down 40 floors in silence, thinking about nothing in particular. Definitely not about a janitor who refused to be afraid. Definitely not. The next morning, Clarissa arrived at her usual time to find a note on her desk. Hand-delivered, not emailed. That alone made it unusual. The building supervisor wanted Daniel Hayes terminated immediately for insubordination. The memo included 3 paragraphs detailing proper employee conduct and chain of command protocols. At the bottom, a line waited for her signature. Clarissa set the paper aside without signing it. She told herself she would deal with it later when she had time. She did not examine why she kept finding reasons not to have time. Thursday came. Then Friday. The unsigned termination notice remained in her desk drawer, buried under quarterly reports. Daniel continued showing up for his shifts. Early mornings and late evenings, pushing his cart through empty hallways, emptying bins, mopping floors. He worked the hours that let him be home during the day, though Clarissa did not know that yet. She only noticed he was always there when the building was quietest. She began noticing other things, too. Small things that should not have mattered but somehow did. Daniel held doors for people even when his hands were full. He picked up things people dropped and returned them without making a production of it. When the coffee machine on the 32nd floor broke, he was the one who stayed late to clean up the mess, even though technically that fell under maintenance, not janitorial. Other employees started greeting him by name. The reception staff, the mailroom workers, even some of the junior executives who normally would not acknowledge someone in a maintenance uniform. Clarissa watched this happen and felt something she refused to name. It sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and uncomfortable. On Monday of the second week, she worked through lunch as usual. Around 1 in the afternoon, she left her office to refill her coffee. The break room on the executive floor was empty except for Daniel, sitting alone at one of the small tables. He had a simple lunch spread in front of him, a sandwich in a reusable container, an apple, a thermos of what looked like water. Next to his food sat a worn paperback, spine creased from multiple readings. Clarissa almost turned around. Then she heard herself speak. "You read during lunch?" Daniel looked up, not startled exactly, but surprised. He closed the book, keeping one finger between the pages to hold his place. "Yes, ma'am. Helps me think about something other than work." She moved to the coffee machine, aware of his presence behind her in a way that felt different from how she usually registered other people. The machine gurgled and hissed. She did not turn around, but she spoke anyway. You are not concerned about your job? Should I be? Clarissa collected her coffee and finally faced him. You spoke out of turn in front of my entire management team. That typically has consequences. Daniel nodded slowly. He set his book down completely now, giving her his full attention. I figured it might, but I would do it again if the situation called for it. Why? The question came out before Clarissa could stop it. She never asked why. She stated facts and expected compliance. But somehow this man had cracked something open in her usual operating system. Daniel considered his answer. He did not rush to fill the silence with empty words. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the same steady quality it had in the conference room. Because someone needed to say it. That man was getting torn apart for something that was not his fault. Maybe you would have fired me for speaking up. Maybe you still will, but I have to live with myself either way. And I cannot do that if I stay quiet when I see something wrong. You think I was wrong. I think everyone has hard days. But taking them out on people who are trying their best does not actually fix anything. It just spreads the hurt around. Clarissa felt her jaw tighten. You know nothing about me or what I deal with. You are right. I do not. Daniel's tone stayed level. No defensiveness. No accusation. Just simple acknowledgement. But I know something about trying to control everything because it feels like the only way to keep things from falling apart. I know what it looks like when someone builds walls so high they forget what it is like to stand in the sun. The words hit her like cold water. Clarissa set her coffee down harder than she intended. The mug rattled against the counter. I did not ask for your analysis. No, ma'am. You asked why I spoke up. I was answering. She stared at him. He looked back with those tired eyes that somehow still held something resembling kindness. Not pity. That would have been easier to dismiss. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. Like he saw past the reputation and the fear and the 40 floors of carefully constructed distance. Clarissa picked up her coffee. Enjoy your lunch, Mr. Hayes. She walked out before he could respond. Back in her office, she stood at her desk without sitting, holding her coffee without drinking it, feeling her heart beat faster than it should. No one spoke to her like that. No one looked at her like that. Like she was just another person with problems instead of a problem to be solved or a threat to be avoided. It bothered her. It bothered her a lot. That evening, she stayed late reviewing contracts. Around 8, her assistant knocked to say goodnight. Clarissa waved her off without looking up from the screen. The office grew quiet around her. Just the hum of computers and the distant sound of the cleaning crew starting their rounds. She heard Daniel's cart before she saw him. The slight squeak of one wheel that probably needed oil. She glanced up as he passed her open door, moving toward the conference room at the end of the hall. Clarissa watched him go. Then, on impulse she would later refuse to examine, she stood and followed. The conference room where everything started. Daniel was inside, methodically wiping down the long table. The glass walls made him visible from every angle, but he worked like no one was watching. Efficient. Thorough. No corners cut even though no one would check his work. Clarissa stepped inside. Daniel saw her reflection in the window and turned. Miss Anderson, I can come back if you need the room. No, continue. She did not leave, though. She stood near the door, arms crossed, watching him work. After a moment, she spoke. The projector has been fixed, permanently. New system installed this weekend. That is good. Daniel moved to the next section of table. I am glad it worked out. Robert still works here. I did not fire him. I did not expect you to. Then why did you speak up? Daniel stopped wiping. He turned to face her fully, his cleaning cloth dangling from one hand. Because even if I could not change the outcome, I could at least make sure he knew someone saw what was really happening. Sometimes that matters more than people think. Clarissa felt something shift in her chest. You barely know him. I barely know anyone here. But I know what it feels like to be blamed for something beyond your control. I know what it does to a person when no one stands up for them. So I stood up, even though it might cost you everything. Daniel smiled slightly. It did not reach his eyes, but it was genuine. I do not have much to lose. Just this job. And if I lose it for doing the right thing, then maybe it was not the right job anyway. You have a child." The words came out flat. Clarissa did not know why she said them. She had not meant to reveal that she had been paying attention. But Daniel did not seem surprised. "I do. A daughter. 8 years old. Then you have everything to lose. Single income. No safety net. This economy. You should be terrified of crossing me. Maybe I should be. But fear does not actually protect us from bad things happening. It just makes us smaller while we wait for them." He went back to cleaning. Clarissa watched him work in silence. After a minute, she found herself speaking again. "When I was your age, I trusted someone. A business partner. We were building something together. Something that mattered. He stole everything, sold our designs to a competitor, and left me with nothing but debt and a very expensive lesson." Daniel stopped working but did not turn around. He was giving her space to speak without the pressure of eye contact. Somehow that made it easier. "I rebuilt from that," Clarissa continued. "Built something bigger, better. But I did it by making sure no one could ever get close enough to hurt me again. Fear keeps people honest. Fear keeps things predictable. Fear works. Does it?" Daniel asked quietly. He still had not turned around. "Or does it just make you lonely?" The question landed like a punch. Clarissa felt her breath catch. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever cared enough to look past the empire and see the isolation. "I am not lonely. I am focused." Now Daniel did turn. His expression held no judgment. Just that same steady recognition that unsettled her so much. "If you say so, ma'am." He finished the last section of table and moved to empty the trash. Clarissa stood there watching him, aware that she should leave but unable to make herself move. Finally, she spoke again, softer this time. "Why are you not afraid of me?" Daniel considered the question. He tied off the trash bag and set it aside before answering. "Because I have already lost the thing I was most afraid of losing. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. I watched her fade for 18 months and could not stop it, could not control it, could not fix it. After that, everything else feels manageable. Even angry billionaires." Clarissa felt something crack in her chest. "I am sorry. Thank you. But my point is, I learned something from losing her. I learned that trying to control everything just makes you tired. Some things break. Some people leave. Some systems fail. That is just life. Getting angry about it does not change it. It just makes the time you have feel worse." He picked up his supplies and moved toward the door. He stopped next to her. "You are not a bad person, Miss Anderson. But I think maybe you are a scared one. And scared people do not usually make the best decisions." He left before she could respond. Clarissa stood alone in the conference room, staring at her reflection in the glass walls. She looked small suddenly. Smaller than she had ever felt in this building she owned. The week that followed was different. Clarissa did not consciously change anything, but something shifted anyway. She caught herself watching Daniel more often, watching how he interacted with other staff, how he helped a new security guard figure out the badge system, how he stayed late to salt the front steps when the weather report called for ice overnight, even though that fell well outside his job description. She started seeing things she had trained herself not to notice. The junior analyst who always worked through lunch because she was afraid of falling behind. The IT manager who apologized before speaking even when he had not done anything wrong. The way conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Like someone had pressed a mute button on the whole building. They were not bad people. They were just scared people. Scared of her. Clarissa tried to tell herself this was necessary. This was how things worked. But Daniel's words kept echoing. Fear does not actually protect us. It just makes us smaller. On Thursday evening, she stayed late again. The building emptied around her until only the night staff remained. Around 9, she heard raised voices from down the hall. Clarissa stood and moved toward the sound. In the break room, she found Daniel facing a young woman in an administrative assistant uniform. The woman was crying. Between sobs, she was trying to explain something about a mistake she had made, A file sent to the wrong department. A report that went out with outdated numbers. I am so stupid, the woman said. Miss Anderson is going to fire me. I know she is. And I just started 2 months ago. Daniel handed her a paper towel from the dispenser. You are not stupid. You made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone works for Clarissa Anderson. She does not forgive mistakes. Have you actually been fired? Not yet. But when she finds out, then maybe do not spend your energy worrying about something that has not happened. Fix what you can fix. Then go home and be with your family. Tomorrow is a whole different day. The young woman wiped her eyes. You do not understand. You do not work directly for her. True. But I have seen her fire people. I have also seen her not fire people when everyone expected her to. She is tougher than most, but she is still human. Give her a chance to surprise you. Clarissa stepped back before either of them could see her. She returned to her office, closed the door, and sat in her chair staring at nothing. Give her a chance to surprise you. When had she become the person people cried about in break rooms? When had her name become synonymous with fear instead of respect? She had built this reputation intentionally, used it as armor, but armor was heavy, and she was tired. The next morning, the young administrative assistant came to her office. Her hands shook as she explained the mistake. The wrong report. The outdated numbers. She apologized 4 times in 90 seconds. Clarissa listened. Then she spoke in a voice she barely recognized as her own. Is the correct version ready? Yes, ma'am. I already prepared it and double-checked everything. Then send it with a brief explanation. Mistakes happen. What matters is how we fix them. The young woman stared at her like she had started speaking a foreign language. That is it. You are not going to fire you? No. But I expect you to implement a verification system so this does not happen again. Check with Robert about setting up automated reviews. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. The woman practically ran from the office. Clarissa sat back in her chair, feeling strange. Lighter somehow. Like she had been carrying something without realizing it and had finally set it down. That night, the crisis came. At 6:47 in the evening, the building lost power. Complete blackout. 42 floors went dark simultaneously. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in harsh, white, fluorescent reality. But the main systems stayed dead. Elevators stopped. Climate control shut down. Computer servers went into emergency protocol. Clarissa was still in her office when it happened. She grabbed her phone and headed for the stairs, finding them crowded with confused employees who had been working late. Everyone was pulling out phones, trying to figure out what happened. Some people were panicking. One woman was crying about being stuck. The stairwell turned into chaos. People pushing, voices rising. Someone screamed about fire and half the crowd surged forward, nearly trampling those in front. Then a calm voice cut through the noise. Everyone, stop moving. Daniel stood on the landing between floors. He had a flashlight in one hand and held up the other for attention. Something in his tone made people listen. There is no fire. This is just a power outage. We are going to move slowly and carefully. No pushing, no running. 1 floor at a time. Who the hell are you? Someone demanded. I am the janitor. And I have been walking these stairs every day, so I know every single one. I am going to lead you down, but you need to stay calm and stay together. People actually listened. Daniel moved down the stairs at a measured pace, his flashlight illuminating the steps ahead. The crowd followed. Clarissa found herself in the middle of the group, watching this man she had nearly fired organize an evacuation that her entire management team had failed to handle. When they reached the lobby, emergency crews were already arriving. The power company estimated at least 3 hours before restoration. Most employees were being sent home, but in the server room, techs were scrambling to prevent data loss. The backup generators were not kicking in properly. Years of information were at risk. Clarissa tried to take control, throwing out orders and demanding updates. But in the dark, with systems down, her usual authority meant nothing. She could not control what she could not see or access. Daniel appeared beside her. The backup power is on the 3rd floor, right? I saw the room when I was cleaning up there. Yes, but I know where the manual override is. Used to work building maintenance before this job. If the generators are not engaging automatically, someone needs to do it manually. He disappeared before she could respond. Clarissa stood in the darkened lobby, surrounded by chaos she could not contain, and felt the last of her carefully constructed control slip away completely. 20 minutes later, the backup generators kicked in. Lights flickered. Systems rebooted. The server room techs let out a collective cheer. Crisis averted. Daniel reappeared, his uniform streaked with grease. That should hold until main power returns. Clarissa stared at him. You just saved about $15 million worth of data. I just flipped a switch that needed flipping. No one else knew how to do that. Daniel shrugged. Most people do not spend their time exploring mechanical rooms. I like knowing how things work. Around them, employees were gathering their things, preparing to head home now that the immediate danger had passed. They were laughing nervously, already turning the blackout into a story they would tell. Not one of them acknowledged that the janitor had solved what the entire management team could not. But Clarissa noticed. She noticed everything. That night, alone in her apartment 40 stories above the city, she stood at her window and thought about control. She had spent 12 years building an empire on the belief that power was the only thing that protected you from chaos. That if you stayed on top, you stayed safe. But tonight, power had failed. Money had not mattered. Fear had not fixed anything. A janitor with a flashlight and calm voice had accomplished what her entire executive team could not. Maybe she had been building the wrong thing all along. The weekend passed like weather Clarissa could not control. Saturday she spent in her apartment, staring at financial reports without reading them. Sunday she went to the office out of habit, but left after an hour because the empty building felt wrong somehow. Hollow in a way it never had before. Monday morning arrived cold and sharp. Clarissa, dressed in her usual gray suit, fixed her hair in its usual severe style, and arrived at her usual time. Everything the same as it had been for 12 years. Except she was different now, and she could not pretend otherwise. The executive staff meeting started at 9. 14 department heads filed in with their usual careful silence. They took their seats. They arranged their materials. They waited for Clarissa to speak first because that was how it always worked. Clarissa stood at the head of the table and looked at their faces. Really looked. She saw the tension in their shoulders, the way they avoided direct eye contact. The careful blank expressions that revealed nothing because revealing something might be dangerous. These were brilliant people, Harvard graduates, industry experts, people she had hired specifically because of their talents, and she had turned them into frightened children who hid from their own boss. Before we begin, Clarissa said, and her voice came out different than usual. Softer somehow. I need to say something. The room tensed further. This was not part of the routine. Changes in routine meant danger. I have been thinking about how this company operates, about how I operate. And I realize I have created an environment where people are more concerned with avoiding my anger than with doing their best work. That is my fault, not yours. 14 executives exchanged glances. No one spoke. They were clearly waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this to be some kind of trap. I am not saying standards will drop, Clarissa continued. I still expect excellence. But I am saying that when mistakes happen, and they will happen because we are human, the response should be to fix them and learn from them, not to assign blame and instill fear. She took a breath. This was harder than she expected. Vulnerability felt like walking on ice that might crack at any moment. Starting today, I want to hear your actual opinions. Not what you think I want to hear. If you disagree with a decision, say so. If you see a problem I am missing, tell me. I cannot run this company effectively if everyone is too afraid to tell me the truth. Robert raised his hand tentatively, like a student unsure if speaking would get him detention. Yes, Robert, Clarissa said. Robert lowered his hand slowly. Does this mean I can tell you that the new software rollout you approved last month is actually causing more problems than it solves? Yes, that is exactly what it means. Why did you not say something before? Robert glanced at the others. Because you seemed certain about it, and no one wants to be the person who tells you that you are wrong. Clarissa felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the urge to defend herself, to explain that she was not wrong, the implementation was just flawed. But she stopped herself and actually heard what he said. Thank you for telling me now, she said instead. Put together a report on the issues and recommendations for fixes. We will review it this week. Robert nodded, looking stunned. Around the table, others started to relax incrementally. Like plants turning toward unexpected sunlight, the meeting continued. People spoke more freely than they had in years. Ideas were challenged. Alternatives were proposed. It was messy and uncomfortable, and nothing like the controlled efficiency Clarissa had built her reputation on. It was also better, more honest, more human. After the meeting ended, Clarissa returned to her office and closed the door. She sat at her desk and put her head in her hands. Change was exhausting. Being vulnerable was terrifying. But Daniel was right. Fear had made her smaller, and she was tired of being small. That evening, she stayed late again. Old habits. But this time she left her office and walked through the building, really seeing it for the first time in years. The break rooms where staff gathered, the cubicles where people spent 40 hours a week, the small personal touches they added to sterile corporate spaces. Photos, plants, a kid's drawing taped to a monitor. She found Daniel on the 38th floor, methodically cleaning a conference room. Through the glass walls, she watched him work for a moment before knocking. He looked up and gestured for her to enter. Miss Anderson, need something? I need to talk to you. Not as your employer, just as another person. Daniel set down his cleaning supplies and moved to one of the chairs. He did not sit, but he stopped working, giving her his full attention. Clarissa remained standing near the door. The glass walls made them visible to anyone passing, but the building was mostly empty. I have been thinking about what you said, Clarissa began. About being scared. About building walls. You were right. About all of it. Daniel said nothing. Just listened with that same patient quality that made it easier to keep talking. When my business partner betrayed me, I decided the problem was trust. If I never trusted anyone, I could never be hurt again. So I built everything around that idea. Control, distance, fear. It worked, in a way. I built an empire. But I also built a prison, and I have been living in it alone for 12 years. She moved to the window, looking out at the city lights below. After the blackout, I realized something. All my power, all my control, it did not actually protect me from chaos. You did. You and your calm voice and your knowledge of how things work. You saved everything I built, and you did it because that is just who you are. Not because I paid you or threatened you or controlled you. Clarissa turned back to face him. I do not know how to be different. But I know I need to try. Because what I have been doing is not working. It never really worked. I just convinced myself it did. Daniel considered her words carefully before responding. Can I ask you something? Yes. What are you actually afraid of? Not the surface stuff, the real thing underneath. The question hit her like a physical blow. Clarissa felt her throat tighten. No one had ever asked her that. She had never even asked herself. That I am not enough, she said finally. The words came out barely above a whisper. That if I am not perfect, not in control, not 10 steps ahead of everyone else, then I am worthless. My partner left because I was not enough. I rebuilt myself to make sure that never happened again. But now I have this empire and I am still terrified that somehow, someday, someone will see through it all and realize I am just pretending to be strong. Tears surprised her. Clarissa never cried, had not cried in years, but now they came anyway. Hot and unwelcome and somehow necessary. Daniel did not move to comfort her, did not offer empty reassurances. He just let her have the moment without making it awkward or trying to fix it. When she finally wiped her eyes, he spoke quietly. You know what I learned when my wife died? That strength is not about never breaking. It is about breaking and then getting back up anyway. You have been holding yourself together so tightly for so long that you forgot you are allowed to crack sometimes. That does not make you weak. It makes you real. I do not know how to be real anymore. Yes, you do. You are being real right now. This conversation. That meeting this morning where you actually admitted you might be wrong. That is real. It just takes practice. Clarissa moved to one of the chairs and sat down. She felt drained, empty, but also lighter somehow, like she had been carrying something too heavy and finally set it down. Your wife, she said. How did you keep going after losing her? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. I almost did not. For about 6 months, I went through the motions. Took care of my daughter because I had to. But I was not really there, just surviving. Then one day my daughter asked me if I was sad because she did not make me happy anymore. He looked at Clarissa directly. That broke something in me, or fixed something. I realized I had a choice. I could stay trapped in the loss, or I could honor what my wife gave me by actually living. She loved life, loved people, loved connection. The best way I could remember her was to do the same. So you became a janitor who stands up to billionaires? Daniel smiled slightly. I became someone who tries to do the right thing even when it is hard. Sometimes that means speaking up. Sometimes it means just being kind to people who are having a bad day. The job does not matter. The way you treat people does. They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward. Just two people who had both lost something and were trying to figure out what came next. Finally, Clarissa stood. Thank you for everything, for speaking up that first day, for not being afraid, for showing me what I was turning into. You showed yourself, Daniel said. I just asked the right questions. Clarissa left him to his work. In the elevator down to the parking garage, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. She looked different, tired, but in a good way. Like she had been running from something and finally stopped. The weeks that followed were not easy. Old patterns died hard. Clarissa still had to fight the urge to control everything. Still felt the fear rising when things did not go according to plan. But she was learning. She implemented open office hours where any employee could come speak with her. The first few weeks, no one came. They did not trust it yet. But slowly, carefully, people started showing up. Bringing ideas, raising concerns, treating her like a person instead of a threat. She learned people's names, not just the executives, but the administrative staff, the mailroom workers, the people who made the building function but usually stayed invisible. She made mistakes, lots of them. Once, she snapped at someone during a stressful deadline, then had to spend 20 minutes apologizing and explaining that old habits were hard to break. The person accepted her apology. That surprised her more than anything. Daniel continued working as the night janitor. She offered him other positions. Better pay. Regular hours. He turned them all down. I like what I do, he explained. And my daughter needs me home during the day. This works for us. But thank you for offering. One evening, about 2 months after the blackout, Clarissa found Daniel in the break room again. This time, she sat down across from him without asking permission. Can I ask you something? She said. Daniel closed his book. Sure. Why are you not afraid of me? Really, the real answer. He thought about it. Because I already know the worst thing that can happen. You can fire me. I will find another job. You can be angry. I will survive it. Nothing you can do to me is worse than what life already did. That does not make you powerless. It just means your power does not scare me. Clarissa absorbed that. Then she asked the question she had been carrying for weeks. Are you happy? Doing this work? Living this life? Most days, yes. I have my daughter. I have work that keeps us stable. I have small moments of connection with people. That is enough. Not everyone needs an empire to feel successful. I built an empire and felt empty. Then maybe build something else. Something smaller but more real. That night, Clarissa drove home through city streets that felt less lonely than before. She thought about empires and connections, about power and presence, about the difference between being feared and being respected. The next morning, she arrived at work at 6:45 as usual. Daniel was finishing his shift, pushing his cart toward the service elevator. She caught up with him near the doors. "Mr. Hayes." He turned. "Miss Anderson, I just wanted to say thank you for everything." "You already did. I know, but I needed to say it again." Daniel smiled. The tired eyes softened. "You are doing good work. Keep going." The elevator doors opened. He pushed his cart inside and turned back to face her as the doors began to close. "One more thing," Clarissa said quickly. "Are you still not afraid of me?" The doors were almost shut when his answer came through the narrowing gap. "I was never afraid of you, just concerned for you. There is a difference." The elevator disappeared. Clarissa stood alone in the hallway, feeling something she had not felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, she could be something other than what fear had made her. She returned to her office. The sun was rising over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. Clarissa Anderson stood at her window 40 floors above the world she had built, and for the first time in 12 years, she did not feel alone. She felt human, and that, she was learning, was more than enough.